Well, happy Tuesday.
Yes, happy Tuesday. And we are pretty much on time today, which is not the norm, unfortunately. So I know that we have a couple announcements. Well, really only one that we have coming up. We have a home buyer seminar coming up, and we're going to start seeing some more advertising and details on that. We are finalizing some guests that we have invited and tying up some of those things. And that is March 12th.
Yeah.
From 6:30 to 8:30. We will have a registration, and I believe we'll have a link that we'll put at least in the comments at some point that you can go register, sign up. We will be offering light appetizers because we do know it's a weeknight and you might be hungry when you get off of work. And when you pre-register, you get a free drink ticket. It's going to be at Thirsty Buffalo in Odessa.
Yeah.
It is where the old Big Storm Brewery was.
Yep.
And the food will be by Havana Dreamers. So if you are local to the area and you have driven down Starkey Road, it's a wonderful cafe. They serve breakfast and lunch only, I believe, right?
Yep, they do.
Yeah, they have wonderful food and
coffee.
They
also do catering, like outside. Their food is fantastic.
Phenomenal. I feel like the only thing I get when I go there are their Cubans. I haven't been able to get away from them. But their coffee is really good. And just great owners, great people. So maybe we'll be able to, get them tied down to be on the show with us one day soon so they can talk about their business a little bit more. And if you haven't been in Thirsty Buffalo, I don't know when they opened up the Odessa location, but they do have the one that is in Land O'Lakes right there in the hub of Bexley. So 2 locations, great company, great owners. And we're excited. We're going to have a lot of really cool and fun tools for people, handouts, for people who, are looking to purchase a home in the near future, whether that's in a couple months or in a year. So hopefully we have some guests that we've invited, and
the idea is to have the guests that we've invited to have a particular part in the transaction. So milestones of the very beginning, where we're doing your application and the realtor to do your contract and negotiate, with another realtor, and inspectors and what they're looking for. If there's down payment assistance, what that looks like. Appraisals, what is the appraiser looking for? So the idea is to have the people in our community that have their expertise in those particular areas all come together. So if you have any questions at all from any part of the entire process, that we have somebody there to answer your particular questions from start to finish. So I'm excited to have this definitely in person. And I really am interested in the new location. When I wanted to go to the Thirsty Buffalo up in Bexley, and I've been, but I wanted to take Chris, but now it's pretty close, so I was really excited. And then when I found out that Havana Dreamers does their food, I was even more excited. So I'm glad that
cherry on top.
Glad that we're able to share that, and to that they've invited us to be able to come there and use their location, and I'm excited. That should be good.
Yeah. And I'd be willing to bet because this is just one of those industries where you are always learning. You learn something, I feel like, with almost every transaction, with just talking to people that are in the industry. Like when we had Kim Pfizer on, we learned stuff about insurance. And, this is why it's so important to have these conversations and these connections and network in the community, because It takes a village to buy
It
a house.
does. And there's changes in each industry. It's impossible for like you to keep up with what I do and vice versa. And there are a lot of people that are involved in a mortgage transaction from start to finish. A lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, it's impossible for you to keep up with the stuff that I have to, and vice versa. Like,
Yeah.
someone wants to talk to me about their income and all this stuff. I'm like, okay, well, you know what? I don't know. You got to talk to your mortgage lender.
Yeah.
Why does the underwriter ask for this and need that? I don't know.
Yeah.
I just know that they do because that's what the lender said.
Because that's what happens.
Yeah. Because they said so.
Right. Sometimes I'd like that to be my answer too, because
I
sometimes
know.
the explanation isn't as cut and dry of why they ask for certain things and what they're looking for. Nor am I. Yes, I've been doing this a long time, and yes, I've learned over time of the things that they are looking for and why, and so on and so forth. But I'm not an underwriter either. So a lot of times I can read their guidelines and I can see that, but on the underwriter's side, they're looking at income different than the way that I'm looking at the income. They're looking and comprehending a condition or a guideline different than the way that I would, or one particular investor wants it a certain way compared to another one, and that underwriter will know that, and that's something that I would not know. So a lot of times, like, I get a list, and if it's something that I don't feel that is typical or needed, I definitely inquire to figure out why and is it necessary. Sometimes
Challenge
it's
it.
not.
You have. Yeah.
Sometimes it's not, and they remove it, and we work together. But sometimes it is, whether I agree with it or not. So
Yeah.
there's that.
Yeah. Yep. And like you said, it takes the village, and from real estate agent to the home inspector to the insurance agent to the appraiser to the title company.
And the automated underwriting findings. A lot of these lenders, they're not manually underwriting these transactions. They're inputting all the data into an automated underwriting system, and basically it spits out their guidelines and criteria, and that's what they're underwriting off of. I always like stories, so I actually have a recent story that I was completely baffled by, and I'm still dealing with it. But we initially submitted the file to purchase. Everything's beautiful, fine, no kinks. We run the findings. We get technically an appraisal waiver. They wanted us to send an appraiser out there saying, yes, your system is correct, and the value of the property is there. So I don't necessarily need a full appraisal. Cost less money, get it back a lot sooner. We have a borrower with a strong credit, putting a decent size down payment, all the positive things of this transaction. So
right, sounds great.
Yeah, fantastic, right? You're like, all right, going, everything's smooth, everything's good. We get the report back. The report costs $200, okay, compared to an appraisal, which is, I mean, it could, right,
600-ish,
700, depending upon, right? $200. This inspection cost. The appraiser goes and basically validates what the underwriting system is telling them. It's the easiest way to explain it. So we get it back. Everything's fine. Yeah, we agree with the value of the property. Everything's good. So something transpired from receiving that report and that final automated underwriting evaluation run. And now all of a sudden they're telling me I need a full appraisal with no explanation why. Nothing changed in the transaction. Nothing. My income is the same. My ratios are the same. My credit report is the same. Nothing has changed. So to me, in my mind, is when they received this documentation validating the value, they've input this information in their system in some sort of way. So my mind goes to, did the appraiser essentially possibly make a mistake on the information that was entered into their form that's being transferred from the appraisal form to the automated underwriting system? Did the collateral review department transpose numbers, figures, something had to have happened for those findings to be
Right.
changed. So I inquired. My initial response from the lender was that I don't do well with I don't know answers. I don't know, but it did change. Nothing changed, and now you need a new appraisal. Okay. So me as the originator, now I have to go back to you, for example, the realtor, the buyer, the other agent, and say, I have no explanation for you. It is what it is. And now we need a full appraisal. And by the way, they can't convert the inspection that was already done to a new appraisal. So now we need a whole new appraisal and we've wasted the $200 or
And all that time.
right. We're supposed to
Not
close
to mention that.
like at the end of the week. We find this out on like Monday type of thing. Okay.
Crazy.
Okay. So long story short is that I don't truly have an answer of what took place, but I had two choices. I explained to everybody what took place, that I really truly don't have an explanation. However, now we're wasting time, and it's exactly what my thought was. And you and I are on the same page with this. So I'm like, all right, I'll get you the credit for the money that you've already spent because they have no explanation. We'll figure it out. We'll work it out. But if I delay on ordering this full appraisal until I get an explanation on what took place that may or may not be needed, now I've lost time and we're not going to close in time. So,
and time is always of the essence when you're under a legally binding contract.
So here I am with like weighing. All right. So what do we do? So thank goodness I have a client that is willing to because sometimes like if it were me, I'd be like, what are you talking about? We already discussed this. My fee was $200. You figure it out.
Yeah.
I kind of am figuring it out, but like I don't want to pay for their appraisal. They don't want to pay for the appraisal. So like I said, I've agreed that we're going to figure out the $200. We'll give them the credit from the lender or however we have to work it, whatever. Like that's the least of my concern. But please pay for this new appraisal, get it scheduled. Now I have to order a rush. So now I have a rush fee on top of it in order to close in time, but I have zero explanation to give you.
Yeah.
It's a tough sell, so to speak. So like I said, thank goodness I had a reasonable client that was willing to proceed while I'm in the background trying to figure out what happened, what took place. And then yes, like for example, if we don't need this in the long, grand scheme of things, if they reset things or input it a different way or, however they quote unquote fix it, if they fix it, now I've, gotten this client to pay for a whole nother appraisal that we may or may not need. So again, timing is of the essence. And if we get an answer, I'm able to cancel it. But if the inspection's already done, no, they technically have to pay for it. So my lesson learned is just get an appraisal for the get-go. Is that really the answer? So it's tough. Like what would we do in this circumstance?
Because I feel like appraisal waivers are hard to come by, and it's usually
more common now.
It's usually when the buyer's putting like 40+% down.
Typically 30.
Typically 30%. Yeah. So I guess it depends on the lender too, right? Like with the appraisal waivers, but regardless, it's something that you shoot for. But I don't think that in the few circumstances that I've had clients get an appraisal waiver, the lenders come back and underwriting's like, oh, actually, we want you to go get one.
It's pretty unique of a situation and like doesn't happen very, very often. But I'm like,
which is pretty interesting. Like, I wonder if there was a comment somewhere on that report or, something had to have changed or been input incorrectly for them to be like, to go back on it.
100% is what I'm thinking. But now I'm like, okay, who's going to go in there and
say, oops, I made a mistake.
Fix it, whatever that they have to do in order for them to change it, to take the time to do that, or to hear me that something's wrong. But I mean, they're like, oh, well, that's just what the findings say. Great. But you should just see me. I had like on both screens. I literally am going like line by line. It took forever to like line by line to make sure that there was nothing,
no discrepancies.
Right. And everything was almost duplicating. I mean, like mirroring itself until I got to the very end of the report where the collateral data had been input. And I'm like, okay, so it has to be like something within this collateral underwriting report that that was submitted. So anyway, like I said, thank goodness I have a client that was willing to, trust me and to move forward and know that I will fight for her and to figure it out, and we'll at least be able to get her the money back for the $200 that she initially spent on this appraisal, and of course take care of the rush fee. But anyway, here nor there. I'm impatiently waiting to see what this comes back as.
Well, I'm glad that she understands, and she knows it's not like you're just making it up,
right?
And I feel like I don't know. I've never had a client be like, oh man, I'm so excited for these underwriting conditions.
No. Right. We were past all of that. Everything was like so super smooth. There's always something. I feel like there's always something.
It's, I hate to, talk down on underwriters, but I mean, it's always, like you said, it's always something. And not that they're bad, but they have a job to do, and they have to request tedious and annoying documentation. And you just have to give it to them. They're the ones that have the money, and you're the one who wants the loan. And as silly as it is, and as annoying, it's a short-term gain for a long-term gain. Once you're done, you're done.
Yeah. Well, I thought I was done. And then, like I said, when they reread those findings, something popped up. And that, like I said, it is not typical. Usually, like,
rare.
It's pretty rare. It's definitely a unique situation, but like that, it was interesting. So anyway,
keeps us on our toes, right?
Right. Yeah. So the reason I brought that up, I was like, we're trying to have an appraiser there, and perhaps that appraiser can shed some light, like for us, and maybe we should have them come on here of what the difference is between those reports, and like, how that information is derived, because it's not like a regular appraisal. It's just the data of the property.
Yeah.
So pretty interesting, I think. And I think that they are supposedly more common, and it's not actually an appraisal waiver, but it's just validating that the value is there without going in and doing like the full inspection. So anyway,
very interesting.
It is. So one of the things that we thought that we would talk about were some like upfront costs. We'll call them upfront costs. We'll talk about the costs associated within the transaction on both the real estate side, we'll call it, and the lending side, because some of the things that you're paying, like a buyer is paying for on the real estate side, doesn't necessarily transpire into the mortgage transaction. So I figured it would be like a good topic to explain all of the costs, the ones that are up front, like out of your pocket, how they can be contributed to the transaction, the ones that are completely separate, and then expectations as far as closing costs are concerned, and what's included in those closing costs, because closing costs is a pretty broad term of what's included and what they're actually for.
Right.
So typically, I guess we'll kind of we'll go back and forth, bounce around a little bit. You go and you are applying for your mortgage loan. You have to be pre-approved essentially before you start shopping with a real estate agent. So one of the first things on my side of the transaction that the client pays for out of pocket most of the time, sometimes, that bank or lender or originator will pay for the credit report up front, depending upon what they're doing with it. So
Mhm.
on my side, I typically, as a courtesy, take care of what's called the soft credit pull. The soft credit pull is exactly that. It is not a hard credit inquiry on the client's credit report. So there's not going to be like an inquiry listed or like a hard ding on the credit report with the possibility of that credit score dropping. But it gives me enough information. It gives me the credit scores. It shows me the history. It shows me their liabilities, whatever their debts are, how much they're paying on a monthly basis in order for me to calculate all of the numbers properly. So, like I said, on my side, I typically do that as a courtesy upfront to do the soft credit pull. Then I send that pre-approval over to Kayla. Kayla then takes them house shopping, and I'll let you kind of go to the next step.
Yeah. So once we find a house, we place an offer on it. And, at this point, I'm going to go over, there's some important dates and deadlines that you need to know. There's something called an earnest money deposit that's due within 3 days of an executed contract. And what does that mean? You as a buyer have signed this offer. Seller has agreed to all these terms. So now we have an executed contract. There's going to be either a law office or a title company that's involved, and they're going to be processing the title work and transaction and holding the money. So this earnest money deposit, you'll hear it, good faith deposit, EMD, just to keep everybody confused, right? That is typically...
They cross words escrow, because in some states, like they actually, they have like an escrow officer type of thing. Florida does not.
So that is typically around 1% of whatever the purchase price is. So it just depends on how you structure your offer. So let's just call it a $300,000 house. Typically, you can put down, $3,000, which Lindsay can use that towards your closing cost down payment or however you structure it. It just depends on what the seller wants as far as putting that, we'll call it skin in the game, just to make sure you're not going to, back out of the contract willy nilly. And that's why you have that deposit. It gives that seller reassurance that you want to buy the house. And let's just say that you're outside of your inspection period and then you get cold feet and you're like, I want to cancel. Well, you can't cancel just for any reason, especially outside of that inspection period that you guys agree upon, and just get your deposit back unless the seller says, you know what, I agree, it's fine. I'm not going to fight over it. And that's what the reason for that is, but that's your first initial out-of-pocket cost. But again, it doesn't go to waste. It goes towards however, Lindsay structures
however we've structured on my side, which we can talk about in just a minute. So now we're under contract.
And within that inspection period, that's when you're going to pay for your home inspection, which ranges depending on who you use. And are you just doing your inspection for insurance, or are you doing a full detailed inspection? Is there a septic tank or a well? Is there something else that you need to get inspected? So that can range from, maybe as little as $250 to, $500 or $600 plus, depending on how many inspections you're doing. So it's going to be property dependent. I always suggest if there's a septic tank, whether it's 2 years old or 10 years old, you get that inspected, because you just never know. And that's a pretty high ticket item to not spend again, depending on what company you use, $300 to $500 just to make sure that it's in good condition.
So on my side, I typically do not ask for, nor do I receive any portion of that home inspection. That home inspection is for your own peace of mind. It's for to get some insurance type of credits, like the 4-point, the wind mitt, to make sure that the property that you're purchasing is to your
and insurable. Yeah.
To however you want to say it. It's for your protection type of thing. So 9 times out of 10, I don't ever ask for it. The only items that I would ever ask for on my side from that inspection would be like your 4-point windmill. But that's not even for me either. Like that's in order to maybe get some insurance quotes. So typically that is completely something separate from the lending side. So now that we're under contract, the contract is sent over to myself. And then I basically finish the application with all of the information on that contract. Now it's time for me to submit the loan over to the lender. Since I'm a broker, we have a pool of lenders. We find the best scenario for that particular circumstance. And we're ready to pull the hard credit pull. At that point in time is typically when we ask for the credit report to be paid upfront. It's done for multiple reasons. Again, it's to show that you're under contract. This is an expense of the transaction, and we're serious and we're moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Credit reports have increased in price over the years. Currently, there's still a whole bunch of things out there that they're trying to negotiate to make the prices of these credit reports less than what they currently are. So if you're a married couple purchasing the property together, we can pull a joint credit report, and that can range anywhere between $60 and $90. If you are unmarried and purchasing a property with another member, we need a credit report for each one of you, which again is between $60 and $90, kind of towards the higher end a piece.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, sometimes, depending upon the type of loan that we're doing, we're able to say, okay, you have to pay for it up front, but we can give you credit for it later on. Or we can credit it towards your down payment or your portion of the funds within the transaction. Again, it's all circumstantial, but typically that is a cost that is upfront, that is paid by the buyer at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
We get the loan submitted over to the lender. Most lenders disclose on their own. And then once those disclosures are sent, they're all very template figures at first. And that's very hard to understand and to comprehend, especially on my side when I'm trying to explain to the buyer, because they want real figures. We're not to the point where we can get real figures. We can get a pretty close estimate of what you're looking for. And that's why it's called an estimate upfront, a loan estimate. We're not giving you a closing disclosure. We're not saying, hey, this is etched in stone. And more than likely it is every cost that possibly could be within the transaction, inclusive of your credit report, your escrow account, your appraisal, everything that possibly could come up within the transaction is put on this initial estimate. And it's kind of a range. We don't have title fees. We don't have exact insurance premiums on it. We are going off of whatever the tax bill is online. We don't have the appraisal. There's a lot of things that we don't have. So it's a good estimate. Once we get those initial disclosures back that are signed, yes, we're not acknowledging that we received them. We know that these are not our final figures, that this is an estimate. And there's a document in that package that's called your intent to proceed. Once that intent to proceed, giving us permission to proceed with the transaction, we will send all the rest of the income documents based on what we need: W-2s, pay stubs, tax returns, driver's license, the contract, any documentation to get the transaction started. And we order the appraisal. The appraisal is, again, another fee that is paid for upfront. It is done typically by a third party. Appraisal management company was a long time ago, but back in the day, we were able to pick up the phone and call the appraiser and say, hey, we have this property at da-da-da-da-da. I need you to go and, get me the appraisal on it. Well, that stopped for many reasons, but now we have appraisal management companies. We place the order with the appraisal management company. That management company then sends out an invoice to be paid. And then an appraiser accepts that order. And they're now the contact in between, we'll call it the lender, and all the other parties within the transaction to kind of make sure that there's no communication saying, hey, we need this value for this property, or whatever the conversation may be.
Yeah.
Those range as well, as far as how much they cost. If we're talking, hey, we have a first-time home buyer and we're going an FHA loan and it's like a regular single-family home, it can be, we'll call it $500. If we're an investor and we have a rent analysis because they're going to rent the property out and we need all these extra forms, it can be as high as $900. Typically, on a regular residential purchase transaction, you're looking anywhere between a 5 and I'll call it 7. 7's a little high as far as the cost of the appraisal. So that is definitely paid upfront, out of pocket, and part of the closing costs of the transaction.
And I think that's really it. I know sometimes, depending on where the contract is being held and processed through at the title company, sometimes they want you to pay for the survey up front.
Correct.
Usually they don't, but I think that depending on whatever their internal regulations are,
they usually have you like sign a form of like guarantee if they don't have you pay for it up front.
Yeah, that you're going to pay for it. Whether like sometimes I've had people drop off a check and they'll just hold on to it, or they'll sign the credit card authorization form, because just in case they back out, or, just in case something happens. And, but a lot of them don't do that, but it is a possibility that could be an upfront fee as well.
Yes.
But most of the time, all the fees that we've discussed are more typical. And unfortunately, if, something happens where either you cancel or, maybe you get denied, the only thing that is going to be refundable, depending on the circumstance, will be that earnest money deposit.
Correct.
Because the inspector and the appraiser, that's not refundable. And, as far as the credit pull and all of that, I don't believe that is refundable either in the event that.
No, it is not. And of course they get a consumer copy of that credit report. But for example, say something happens with the property or the value of the home or whatever, and they decide that they would like to purchase a different home within a certain amount of time, we're able to utilize that credit report that you've already paid for. Of course, we would still need a new appraisal with the new property, getting new inspections, and you're almost starting over. However, we would be able to utilize that credit report. Usually it's 4 months. Most lenders are 4 months that we're able to utilize that credit report with a different transaction.
Yeah. So it's, there's a lot, I'm sure as you can see, there's a lot that goes into it, and there's a lot of steps. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of people involved. And it does come with some upfront costs and, some risks, of course. Nothing's ever guaranteed, but, that's kind of, our job to make sure that, we try to eliminate as much risk as possible, especially like on my end, like, does this property look like it's going to be worth what we're putting the offer in for? I'm going to look at comps. Usually my buyers are looking at comps.
And condition of the property. Right. If they're going FHA, there's certain criteria that the property typically has to meet.
Right.
Kayla is really good at looking at that. One of the first things that she does is look, okay, when did the seller that's selling this property buy this house? Is it within a certain amount of time? So are we able to go and utilize FHA financing? That's something that happened the other day that I don't necessarily have the access to until later on in the transaction. So that's something that she takes care of, upfront before really even taking the buyer to that home to look at it, to make sure that it will qualify for what we're trying to do, which is important. We don't want to be stuck later on saying, oh my gosh, they bought this house last month and now they're selling it and FHA won't allow it. FHA, and we have to completely restart everything. So
Or sometimes there's very clear damage to the property that, FHA is really big on wood rot, right? So, if we have a house that has a lot of wood siding and it's all rotted off, I'm going to be on the phone with the listing agent, like, hey, is the seller willing to make repairs? Could we, go FHA on this, yes or no, because that's the last thing, I want to do is, to waste a buyer's time, and take them to a property that just doesn't qualify, or to get them excited about something or get under contract, waste inspection money,
Yeah.
and even get to appraisal, because that's money that's not refundable. We don't want to get to that process if I know already that it's not going to work.
Right.
So that's where a lot of communication comes in, on my end with the listing agent to say, hey, look, can you talk to your seller? We need to know if they are willing to do these things and, within a timely manner. So that way we can move forward with this type of loan. So it's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah. And lots of teamwork, lots of communication, lots of, crossing your T's, dotting your I's within the transaction itself. And it's really important to make sure that you have the right people, on your side that work well together and can be in, your benefit.
Yeah. Yep. Be in your corner, be able to communicate with one another, because we're all a part of the transaction, so it's really important for both agents to talk, for agents to be able to communicate with the lender if there's a lender involved, everyone to be able to communicate with the title company or the attorney's office who's handling the title work. So all of these people need to have open communications to say, hey, where are we at with the process? Do we need to order this, or are we ready for this next step? So.
Yeah. And there's a lot of information, like even on my side being, I don't have access to the MLS. Like I guess I could pay for it. I don't even know how it works, to be totally honest with you. So I kind of rely on Kayla, like, hey, can you look this up for me? Or, a lot of the public information that I have access to isn't anywhere close to, the systems that she has in place until I get to the lending side. I can look up and say, oh, okay, these are all the properties that you've owned, but it tells me nothing about the recent transactions for a certain property or, anyway, point is that, make sure that you have a good, strong team that communicates well with each other to be able to protect you. So, all of this will definitely be talked about at our first time homebuyer seminar. And if it's something that anybody's interested in coming to, just click the link. You'll have to order your ticket. It's one ticket per person. We do have to cap it at how many people that we're able to let come for multiple reasons, but mainly so we have enough time to have those one-on-one conversations to answer any questions that people have. And if we need additional time, we can always set up an appointment, after the seminar to sit down and to really have a lengthy conversation of the buying process and the ins and outs and whether they qualify and things like that. But
because the buying process looks different for everybody,
It does.
We have, those are the points that we just went over is typical. Those are the main points, but on the lending side for you is completely different, for everybody.
Everybody has their own circumstance, their own scenario. And there's different lenders out there that offer things that are better based on what that is. And that's kind of my job, is to figure out where it is best placed. And most of it is like I call it painting the picture. The picture, the grand scheme of things, what we're looking to do. Do we need down payment assistance? Do you have the savings? Is it beneficial to even look at this particular program? Are you living in this house? Are you buying this house to rent it out? The list is long of the different scenarios that there are. And that's a conversation, like, of me asking questions, which stem to other questions. And the more information that I have, the better.
Yeah, 100%.
Sometimes I get the information from the realtor because we haven't talked about it, or it was like, oh, they said that, I don't know, their son is moving back into the property. Well, that makes like a big difference on my side that we hadn't talked about because they didn't think that it was pertinent information. But if we have somebody living in a house that we're doing down payment assistance on, then in certain down payment assistance programs, we need their income.
Yep.
So it's just what questions to ask, what conversations have been had, and to be able to make sure that we're all on the same page throughout the whole transaction. So
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Well, that's our Tuesday tidbit. That was a lot of information. That's exciting. But if you want more, come to our first-time homebuyer seminar. Even if you're not a first-time homebuyer, so much has changed. You'll learn a lot. And
if you're looking to just buy in general and you haven't bought a house in 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is.
Things changed from last year. Come hang out with us. Come learn. We'll bring all the experts of the community. We'll have a free drink ticket for you and a packet to send home with all of the information that we're gonna go over. And even if you learn one thing, it's something more than you did before. So
we'll keep it light and fun. We're not going to drill you with anything or make you sign anything.
No obligation. Whatever. There's nothing to buy. We're not trying to get anything from you. We just want to, give the information for the people that are interested and want to know. So that's
exactly.
All right. Well, happy Tuesday, everybody. Have a great day. And we will, who's our guest? Is it next week? I think it is.
Tanner Kilty?
Yep. I think we're going to have,
next week. It is the 18th.
Yep. We're going to coordinate whether we're going to go to his office or where we're going to go. But I think we're all going to be together. So see you next week with Mr. Tanner Kilty.
All right.
All right. Have a great day.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.